European leaders head to Ukraine with a new peace initiative. NATO is set to announce details of a plan to bolster the alliance's military presence in Eastern Europe. Greek and German finance ministers agree to disagree over debt relief talks as the ECB tightens the screw on Athens. Hello and welcome to Aletejah European Bulletin, coming to you live from London. Diplomatic efforts are underway to end renewed fighting in Ukraine, with French President François Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel heading to the capital Kiev to present a new peace initiative. Meanwhile, NATO officials meeting in Brussels are set to announce details of a plan to bolster the alliance's military presence in Eastern Europe. The new developments come as pro-Russian separatists advance on the ground, capturing the eastern town of Volhyrsk. Hassan Al-Khatib has more.
A second Cold War confrontation between the West and Russia is edging closer, with the fighting on the ground in eastern Ukraine tipping in favor of the pro-Russian separatists. NATO defense ministers arrived in Brussels today to discuss strengthening the alliance's presence in Eastern Europe by setting up a network of small command centers. Ministers are set to decide on the makeup of a new rapid reaction force, which NATO says will bolster their ability to respond swiftly to alleged Russian military threats. Described as the alliance's biggest reinforcement since the end of the Cold War, it will comprise of around 5,000 soldiers with air, sea and special forces support. For their parts, France and Germany are intensifying the diplomatic push to end the crisis in Ukraine. Both French President François Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel are travelling to Kiev today, proposing a new peace initiative.
We will make a new proposal to solve the conflict. It will be based on Ukraine's territorial integrity, and we will talk about it with President Poroshenko today and Friday in Moscow with the Russian president, because time is running out. It won't be said that France and Germany together haven't tried everything, undertaken everything to preserve peace.
Meanwhile, US Secretary of State John Kerry is in Kiev with a different agenda. He's to meet President Petro Poroshenko and is expected to discuss military assistance. Policy-making circles in Washington appear to have a bigger appetite for arming Ukraine, with Pentagon Chief Ashton Carter pushing for further economic and political pressure on Russia.
The economic and political pressure on Russia has to remain the main center of gravity of our effort at pushing back. And the Europeans are critical to that. So European solidarity and NATO solidarity are critical in this regard.
On the ground, though, in east of Ukraine, residents are facing more devastation. Another residential apartment was shelled in Donetsk. At least 7 civilians have been killed and over 30 injured in the last 24 hours. And on the front lines, pro-Russian separatists have continued to make gains, claiming to have taken control of the town of Bulletin in the Donetsk province. They hope the advance will give them the upper hand in their offensive in the key town of Debaltseve. But as NATO plans to bolster its forces in the Baltic states, and with the US moving closer to arming Kiev's forces, it's feared that these moves will only push peace talks in Ukraine further into the distance, fueling tensions further.
Russian missile forces are holding major drills in Serbia. 5 other Russian regions have also put ballistic missile launchers on combat patrol missions. About 700 units of military equipment, including launchers, have been deployed. The missiles on patrol missions are believed to be one of the most powerful weapons on the planet. One of the missiles, called Topol-M, carries a single nuclear warhead. The Yars ballistic missile has multiple warheads. The Topol-M missile was designed to penetrate an American anti-ballistic missile shield. Soldiers were also exercising concealment tactics and retreat of units from under airstrikes and repelling them. The exercises involve more than 7,000 servicemen. Now joining us via Skype is political analyst William Spring. Now we know that Merkel has expressed the need for diplomatic solutions. How beneficial are talks between herself, Hollande and Putin likely to be? And is a political solution in sight at this stage?
No political solution is in sight at all because of the personality, policies and determination of Angela Merkel. She does seem to have reincarnated the German Lebensraum. She wants space in the East, as does Obama. And consequently, she is the Russophobe leader of what we used to call, when I was a child, West Germany, but it's now a united country. However, it's just not possible for Angela Merkel to be in any way a mediator or in any way push forward a peaceful agenda in Ukraine, because this is not NATO's wish. NATO is under the control of a limited number of neocons based in Washington. There are admittedly one or two people who are non-American in the command structure of NATO, such as the new Secretary General, who is, I think, Danish. But this is purely cosmetic. The real pressure is coming from the neocons in Washington, who President Obama cannot control, and Secretary of State Kerry doesn't want to control. And the result is the neocons see the need for solidarity in NATO with Europe. Now, last time I heard this phrase, NATO credibility and NATO solidarity, was to do with the bombing of Serbia in 1999. A totally illegal action.
Now, William, we know that Kerry, as you've mentioned, is in Kiev. Now, what do you make of his visit? Is he simply using this as an excuse to provoke Russia?
Of course. And the Americans will carry on provoking Russia until Russia loses its patience and gives a riposte, which America will not be able to gainsay. Because Obama, despite all his bluster, and Kerry for his hypocritical duplicity and betrayal of the peace movement, which he used to be a member of back in the 1960s, actually Kerry doesn't want a war either. But both of them, Obama and Kerry, are under the control of Senator John McCain. Senator McCain decides the policy of the American president in Eastern Europe. And the reason is there's a very large constituency of Ukrainians in the United States of America. So all American politicians want to be on the right side of these Ukrainians. These Ukrainians are delightful people, very nice people. I used to live with them in North America when I was there a few years ago. But they are still living in the days of the 1930s, where Russia was the great bogeyman, causing starvation and spreading misery everywhere. And they need the diaspora, the Ukrainian diaspora, needs to become aware of the realities of life now. What's happened in Ukraine is a complete destruction of the east of Ukraine by NATO.
Now, William, you've mentioned that neither Kerry or Obama want a war, but there is talk of rapidly deployable spearhead force. Now, how do they expect Russia to respond to that?
Well, it's a laughable spearhead force. This is NATO's so-called spearhead force, consists of 30,000 troops, as far as I know, which is, with the British, French and Germans. The British, their military power is shrunk to virtual insignificance. They wasted lots of lives and armour and materiel in useless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're in no position, the British, are in no position to defend either the Ukraine or even any part of the United Kingdom right now. So we can forget Britain. Francois Hollande is a poseur. He would like to talk tough, but all he and David Cameron have ever done is create manifest anarchy in, for example, Libya. That was one country that Sarkozy and Cameron liberated, so-called. In fact,
William, you're saying to forget Britain, but they're also down to supply non-lethal aid. Now, are we likely to see an increase in physical and perhaps aggressive support from Western allies towards Russia anytime soon?
Well, yes, there'll be a lot of bluster. There'll be a lot of talk, but they haven't got the minimal armaments necessary, because they can't increase the spearhead force much beyond 40,000, and that's derisory, peanuts, compared with, say, the Soviet Union as it used to be, or Russia as it is now. If Mr. Putin decided just to roll forward the army, the Russian army, 300,000 men and women, and just rolled forward into Kiev, that would rather throw all the warmongers of America and Britain and France into disarray, because the last thing they actually want is a war. They like to appear as if they are pressing Ukraine and helping Ukraine, but they're not helping Ukraine. They're only creating conditions for a world war. And I hope we don't have one, but it does seem that the French, British and Germans, when in association with the United States, are actually seeking to provoke a world war. I just hope it doesn't go hot, you know?
William Spring, political analyst, thank you very much for joining us today. Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis met with his German counterpart in Berlin today, following the ECB's increased pressure on Greece to stick to its financial commitments. Despite reaching no agreement with his German counterpart, Varoufakis said he'll continue his quest for his debt relief proposals.
Things are hotting up for Greece. Greek borrowing costs leapt and bank shares were hit hard today after the European Central Bank abruptly pulled the plug on its funding for the country's financial sector, a move Athens labelled as an act of coercion. It means that a waiver that allowed Greece to swap its junk-related debt for money will now expire on February 11th, weeks earlier than the previous deadline of February 28th. However, Greece's newly sworn-in politicians are defiant in the wake of the ECB move.
We will resist these carnivorous policies that have destroyed the Greek people. The European Central Bank, the International Monetary Fund and the Troika must understand that they must make concessions that will be for the good of the Greek people. The people for the last 4 or 5 years have suffered a great deal.
But despite the tough line from the ECB, Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis is drumming up support for his debt relief proposals. He's in Berlin today for talks with German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble for a final showdown with German leaders over plans to cut Greece's debt repayments.
As Dr. Schäuble said, we didn't reach an agreement. It was never on the cards that we would. We didn't even agree to disagree from where I'm standing. From where I'm standing, we agreed to enter into deliberations as partners with a joint orientation towards a European solution for European problems.
The ECB's decision reflects the uncertainty about whether Greece will reach an agreement on its bailout programme with the rest of the Eurozone. With Greek government bonds having such a poor credit rating, the ECB are adamant that Greeks stick to the rules set out in the bailout programme. Despite the optimism from Greek Prime Minister Alexei Tsipras that a deal will be struck, the pressure is on. Demonstrations will be held in Athens tonight as Greeks unhappy with the ECB's move will rally in. And as the new Greek government is sworn into parliament, the battle to save Greece from austerity continues.
Following months of economic stagnation across Europe, the EU's Executive Commission says the Eurozone's economic prospects are brighter now than they were 3 months ago, thanks to cheaper oil, a weaker euro and the European Central Bank's quantitative easing.
Growth is set to gradually pick up speed as the impact of adverse factors on growth gradually fade. Growth is expected to accelerate in the EU to 1.7% this year and 2.1% in 2016. In the euro area, growth is expected to increase to 1.3% in 2015 and 1.9% in 2016. This is, of course, a welcome news.
You're watching Aletejah European Bulletin. Still to come. Greece's Golden Dawn Party members face trial. More on that story after the break. Welcome back. A reminder of the main headlines. European leaders head to Ukraine with a new peace initiative as fighting rages in the east. NATO is set to announce details of a plan to bolster the alliance's military presence in Eastern Europe. And Greek and German finance ministers agreed to disagree over debt relief talks as the ECB tightens the screw on Athens. Pope Francis has urged Roman Catholic bishops around the world to fully cooperate with the commission he established to protect children from sexual abuse by clerics and to give the matter the highest priority, even if it reveals fresh scandals. The Pope sent the letter to bishops and heads of religious institutions a day before the commission, which he set up last year, was due to hold its first full meeting.
Every child that is saved from abuse in the future is really a life saved, and as a survivor I don't want to see any child go through the same as I have myself, and I think that's the way most survivors feel.
Leader of the neo-Nazi Greek Golden Dawn Party and more than 70 party members will stand trial on murder charges and belonging to a criminal group, an offence that carries up to 20 years in prison. The judge's ruling comes almost a year and a half after the Greek government cracked down on the party following an investigation into a 2013 murder of an anti-fascist rapper by the Golden Dawn supporter. Suad Ahmed has more.
It's one of the most significant mass roundup of lawmakers since Greece's 1967 military coup. The head of Greece's Golden Dawn Party, Nikos Mikaloliakos, and over 70 party members are set to go on trial, accused of charges including murder and belonging to a criminal organization. Among the defendants are all 18 of the far-right party's MPs in the previous Greek parliament. The trial follows a probe into the murder of an anti-fascist rapper by a Golden Dawn supporter back in 2013. However, the party vehemently denies any link. But the charges don't stop there. The party is also associated with the killing of a Pakistani immigrant and the beatings of political rivals. Golden Dawn MPs were also found to have Nazi paraphernalia in their homes, and according to witnesses, there were party hit squads formed to attack opponents. But despite the charges, Golden Dawn are doing well politically. Last month, they came third in the country's general elections, good for 17 seats in Greece's 300-seat parliament. According to critics, the Golden Dawn's support is down to the party capitalizing on the financial crisis and its violently anti-immigrant rhetoric, winning votes among an ultra-nationalist fringe. But with a trial looming, Golden Dawn members will be more worried about what sentences they may face. Most of the suspects will be tried for being members of a criminal organization, a serious offense in Greece, carrying a 20-year jail sentence. However, in order to establish the offense of running a criminal organization, the accused must have financial benefit from the criminal activity, something they might find difficult to prove. Others are suspected of crimes varying from murder to conspiracy to murder, possession of weapons and racist violence. It's not clear whether the party's lawmakers will be permitted to sit in parliament until the start of the trial, expected to begin before the end of May. But with the new radical left government in control, the judicial process is expected to be sped up.
Now joining us to discuss this issue is journalist and activist Kevin Ovenden, who was in Greece earlier this week. Now we know that the Golden Dawn party leader and 72 other members are to go on trial. What implications will this have on the party, if any?
Well, it's a huge development, and it's one which the anti-fascist and anti-racist movement in Greece have been pushing for, as well as the families of Pavlos Fisas, the rapper who was murdered, and Shehzad Luqman, the Pakistani retail worker who was murdered by Golden Dawn. I think the implications will be twofold. First of all, it will continue the process of delegitimizing Golden Dawn, of it not being considered a normal political party, that it, in essence, it is a criminal conspiracy organised around violent street fighters who also engage in protection rackets and so on. But it will also, if it is just left at that, it will not deal with the voting base of Golden Dawn, because as your report quite rightly said, the Greek state has been forced to turn against Golden Dawn. The outgoing Tory-led government had to move to clamp down. It wasn't its intention to do that, it was forced to, but despite that clampdown, it still got 7% of the votes at the general election and has 17 MPs. And winning over the base of Golden Dawn is a task for the anti-racist and anti-fascist movement, and they're taking to it with alacrity. They are seeking to win people away from the scapegoating politics of hate and towards the politics of hope, a politics of hope which led to the election of the Syriza government 2 weeks ago.
Now, Golden Dawn deny the charges, so how likely is it that they will be found guilty?
Well, the process is unique, the legal process, because the prosecution is being brought by the state, but in addition, there's a legal procedure in Greece which has allowed the representatives of the anti-fascist and anti-racist movement, acting on behalf of Shehzad Luqman and other victims of the Golden Dawn, also to be part of the prosecution. Now, if it was just in the hands of the state prosecutors, I would be very doubtful that the prosecution would come to a successful conclusion of convicting them. But I know the lawyers personally who are acting for the anti-fascist movement, and they are going to bring forward, and have already brought forward, vast amounts of evidence. They've published a dossier which is the size of a book, of evidence which had been neglected by the state of the crimes of Golden Dawn. And furthermore, what they will be demonstrating are the connections between Golden Dawn and elements of the Greek state itself, within the police force in particular, with the intelligence services and so on. So this is going to be a long trial which will be aimed primarily at Golden Dawn, but will also criticise and bring to light its connections with the wider right wing in Green society. So I'm quite confident about that, actually, but I think that ultimately the judge's opinion will be swayed not only by what happens in the courtroom, but what happens outside the courtroom with the continuing mobilisation of the Pakistani community and others against racism and against Islamophobia.
Well, now we know that the new government has spoken out against the rise of Nazism in Greece. Do you think that they have the authority themselves to dissolve this party due to their alleged aims to use violence to propagate their beliefs?
The government constitutionally does not have that authority, for good reason, because that power, if it did exist, could be used by forces which would be governments which would be hostile to democracy and hostile to progress. So I'm pleased, as I think most people, that is not the power of the government. That's something that has to be done judicially through the court system, and it can only be done by demonstrating that this is not, in fact, a political party in the normal sense, that it is a criminal conspiracy masquerading as a political party. As your report suggested, that requires quite a lot of proof. You have to it requires that you show a degree of organisation, you show a hierarchical organisation, you show that there's a controlling mind behind the thuggish activity. But I think that can be done because Golden Dawn, its initiation rights for members, makes no secret of the fact that they might have branches, they might have public events like any normal party, but the heart of the party are the street fighting battalions, and the street fighting battalions are linked to the finance department because they're engaged in illegal activity, as well as obviously the illegal racist violence that they commit.
Journalist and activist Kevin Ovenden, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, in the UK, the Magna Carta's 4 surviving original copies were displayed in the House of Lords today. The event marks the 800th anniversary of the Charter, which first laid the foundations of the rule of law. The manuscripts, 2 held by the British Library and 1 each by Lincoln and Salisbury cathedrals, will be on show for just 1 day in the Palace of Westminster as part of a programme of events commemorating the sealing of the Magna Carta. British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline announces a drop in quarterly sales, but a deal with Novartis this year should help revive its fortunes.
GlaxoSmithKline is one of the leading drug companies rolling out experimental Ebola vaccines in Liberia this week. The trial run involves thousands of volunteers and is being tested in a bid to slow the spread of the epidemic. But Glaxo may have other products to worry about. The pharma giant announced an 8% drop in fourth quarter sales to £6.19 billion.
The main issue for GSK in 2014 has been its US respiratory franchise. Advair went off patent, and the replacement products in GSK's respiratory franchise just haven't delivered.
Britain's top drug maker expects a challenging first half of the year, but is optimistic about future prospects. GSK is looking to refocus its business following an asset swap with its Swiss peer Novartis. The deal should also give GSK potential flexibility to spin off some operations.
It's a huge revolutionary deal, and once it closes, which is expected within this first half, it will free up GSK to do different things. Andrew Whitty spoke today on the conference call about opening up any corporate restructuring activities. You know, he's open to anything, quite frankly, that will deliver shareholder value. And people are excited about that.
One area being singled out is GSK's HIV unit. Some reports suggest the division could be listed on the stock market by 2016, placing it among the most prominent share offerings in the healthcare industry.
Now a reminder of the main headlines. European leaders head to Ukraine with a new peace initiative as fighting rages in the east. NATO is set to announce details of a plan to bolster the alliance's military presence in Eastern Europe. And Greek and German finance ministers agree to disagree over debt relief talks as the ECB tightens the screw on Athens. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.